Hey guys, and welcome back to another one of the GCSE tuition lessons. So today what we're going to look at is, so we're going to start off just finishing up the content that we've started. So we're just going to finish off with iteration, and then I'm going to talk to you a bit about exam techniques. I know you guys are going to have some mocks coming up, and you know, maybe you have exams coming up when you watch this, whatever. I'm going to go through some exam techniques and some tips in terms of that. So let's just get started with the iteration. So with iteration, normally the questions are about 3 or 4 marks, and they're really not too bad. I'm going to show you a trick on how to do them in about 10 seconds that you'll be able to manage to get all the marks quite easily. Hey Evie, how are you? So yeah, with iteration, not too tricky. Essentially, all iteration means is you do something over and over and over again. Okay? So, what we're going to do is start with this question. So it tells us the number of rabbits in a field t days from now is pt, where p0, so that's the original. Not too bad. Unfortunately, I came down with another fever over the last few days because one of my roommates works in a primary school and children are disgusting creatures. And yeah, so she brought it home like a rabid dog. I'm not too bad now though, to be honest. The fever's gone. I have a bit of a cough. That's about it. I'm actually feeling pretty decent though. I'm not too bad. Not too bad. But yeah, that's also why I'm in a t-shirt, because I didn't go to work today, and I just didn't put on a shirt and tie. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, what I was thinking of today, just in case you didn't hear, is we'll just do the iteration, because that's like the last major topic we haven't done, and then we'll go on to some exam strategy stuff. So exam tips and everything, because I know that you wanted me to go through how to think logically and stuff like that. So I have a few tips that might help you for your exams. So, essentially, with iteration is they always give you an initial amount here. That's what the 0 stands for, right? T days from now, so 0 days from now means today. And then to work out the next day is you take the current day and sub it into that formula. Right? So what they probably teach you to do is that P1, so 1 day afterwards, is you do 1.15 times 220 minus 20, right? And you put that into a calculator, work it out, right? So 1.15 bracket 220 minus 20, 230, and then you'd keep going, right? So this is one way to do it. And I'm doing it the long way just this once, so I can show you a shortcut. Which, again, I know some of you have already expressed that you know what to do. And then all we do is we change that to 3. And then we're going to keep going. 241.5. And then lastly, P3. Also, now that a few more people are in, I do have to apologise to you guys, because the lesson ended quite abruptly last week. So, I didn't end it, but one of my roommates wanted to watch the World Cup match. I can't remember if it was England or not, and accidentally turned off the internet instead of turning on the TV. Hence, the internet cut off, and because he didn't realise in time, by the time he had turned it back on and the stream started up again, everyone else was gone because YouTube automatically closed the stream. So I do apologise for that. Yeah, so this is like the legit way to do it, I guess you would call it. However, and again, this is 3 marks, right? And it didn't take me 3 minutes to do, so it is definitely doable this way. And again, your answer would probably be 255, you just round up, right? Because they're rabbits, you can't have 0.725 of a rabbit. However, there is a quicker way to do it. And with these 3 markers, the reason why I love iteration so much is because you have 3 minutes to do a 3 marker. If you can do this in about 10 seconds, it means you have 3 extra minutes to spend on other questions, on the questions that are a bit harder, right? So, here's how you can do it quite easily. Start with the number that they give you, so 220, and just hit the equals button. Okay? Now, this ANS button here saves your last answer. That's what ANS stands for. It stands for answer. So what you can do is now sub in, instead of PT, we're just going to put the answer button minus 20. Now that answer is currently 220. Now if I press equals, it gives me 230. Press equals again, it'll give me my next answer, 241.5. Press equals again, it gives me 254.725. And again, as long as you write down all of those numbers, you get the full 3 marks. And I did it in a few seconds. Okay. So super easy and quick trick. And again, I know some of you have learned this. So we're going to go through some more of the questions, see if we can get it a bit more tricky ones. And then we're going to go through the exam technique. And obviously you can also ask me any questions that you may have. So let's get started. So again, number of people living in the town is this. Work out the number of people 3 years from now. So again, P1 equals P2 and P3. So the method marks just you get given for writing P1, P2 and P3 and what they are. So let's quickly work it out. So we have the initial thing is 55,000. Right, so that's now my answer. Then I just type in the equation as I see it. Except instead of the variable, I'm going to put the ANS button, minus 800. And now, if I just press equals, I get that. And then all I need to do is write them down. And those are my method marks. Just in case something does go wrong, which it shouldn't, but you know, better be safe than sorry. And you don't need to round up until you get to your actual final answer, okay? So even though it doesn't make sense to have 0.78 of a person, we're going to round up just right at the end. And then 57553, blah, blah, blah. So 3 years from now, you're going to have 57,553 people. Yep, fairly easy so far, I think. Now, there are slightly trickier versions. This isn't actually one of them, this is actually okay. Find these 3 values. Again, just because they've changed the letter, and just because it looks a bit more complicated, doesn't actually make it any harder. x0 is 3, so let's press 3, and then equals, right? Now, I rewrite this formula, but instead of xn, I'm writing ans. So 3 plus fraction 9 over ans squared. And then I just press equals 3 times. And that's it. Okay, so you can save so much time doing this, which you can then use on the hard questions. You know, some of the end questions that are quite... sorry, I'm a bit foggy at the moment, I'm on a lot of medication. Some of the questions at the end that are 5-6 markers that require a lot of thinking. Normally it takes you longer than 5 or 6 minutes, so these questions are great for kind of saving that time and bringing it back. So instead of having to do a mark a minute, you can save some more time. Hey Lila. I always find the end easier than the middle. Yeah, sometimes they can do that. So actually I was looking for a few extra questions that I can use as an example for my exam tips I'm going to do a bit later on. And I did notice that the last questions weren't always the worst, but a few questions before the end were. So, but yeah, it's good to actually save as much time as you can whenever you can, right? And again, we have these. So I'm assuming iteration is fairly easy at the moment, but there are some difficult bits, I promise, where they also ask you to rearrange these formulas and do all kinds of funky stuff like that. So we will get onto those in about 2 seconds. And again, if you have any questions, do let me know. Also, just in the back of your mind, have a think about what you want me to do next. I was thinking from next week onwards to start doing exam papers, but if you have other topics you want me to focus on, then please let me know, okay? But, yep, so 504. We should probably write it as numbers, right? And, oh god, let's write it as a fraction actually, just to make my life a bit easier. So, I think these types of questions are okay for now, right? So, why don't we go on to something a bit more interesting? But, in terms of iteration, that is exactly what I would do, right? Just use the ANS button, and I did these in seconds, right? It's not too bad. However, you can get to slightly different parts. But what you should know, and again, if you're doing A-level maths, this is going to be quite useful as well, but just for the exam, is that the whole point of iteration is to find solutions to equations. Okay? So if they ever ask you, and there's a question coming up on this in a second, like what are x1, x2 and x3? They are approximate solutions to the equation that you rearranged. So this one in this case. Okay? So it is a very useful thing to do, and it happens a lot in kind of maths and science. So just so you guys are aware, there are certain mathematical equations that we can't solve exactly. So instead we use iteration to find really good approximate solutions. So for example, 1 and 1 equals 2, right? I know, high level. But let's say if I didn't know 1 and 1 was 2, but I could find an approximate solution that said it's 1.9999987, right? That is a pretty reasonable approximation, right? That's the kind of thing that we actually do in real life. So again, personally I did a degree in physics. Some of the problems we have, we can't solve them completely, right? And computers aren't powerful enough to get an exact answer. So what we'll do is we'll get something that's correct to about 5 decimal places, because that's correct to a 100,000th of a degree, which is really accurate. And we don't need to be more accurate than that. So iteration is really useful in real life. It's used all the time because, to be honest, some maths equations are too hard for us to solve, and they're too difficult for computers to solve as well. So I think we'll leave this question because I think, again, it's just the exact same thing. You use it 3 times and your final estimate is going to be an estimate to this equation, okay? Same thing. Now this is the question I was coming across here, so we'll do this question here. So, again, start with 2.5, press equals, that now makes that my answer button. Now I rewrite this formula, but instead of writing the xn bit, I'm just going to write answer. And again, it doesn't matter what letter it is, just whatever the variable is, replace with the ANS button. And I just keep pressing equals. Nice and easy. And I'm going to leave this in terms of a fraction because I think it's going to get quite messy otherwise. Yep. So and again, just have a think about what kind of questions you want to ask me at the end of this. But I do have some exam tips I want to share with you. So, this is the part part B that they can sometimes ask you, right? Explain the relationships between those 3 values and this equation here. So they've actually made this a bit more tricky. Sometimes they give you this equation, sometimes they don't. But in this case, we have to show that this equation has something to do with this equation. Okay? So this is what I mean by sometimes they need to rearrange. So this really tests your algebra skills. So what I need to do is show that this equation can be written like this. Okay? So if I'm going to write out both equations just so I can do it. X cubed minus 2x squared minus 5 is 0. And the equation I want to show is that one, okay? Five over x squared, cool. 2. Okay. And again, this can be quite tricky because it's not rearranged in the way that you might expect all the time. So, if we have a look, the 5 and the 2 are positive, which means these 2 things must have been moved to the other side. Right, so let's start with that. So again, this might help with the whole thinking logically thing that you mentioned before. Right, so I'm thinking logically by looking at the answer, look at the signs. So that tells me what the sign should be in my answer as well, right? Now, if I look on the left-hand side, there's just x, whereas on the right-hand side there's an x squared. So I'm going to divide both sides by x squared in order to make this x equals instead. So divide through by x squared, and I get x equals 2 plus 5 over x squared. So now if I just rearrange this slightly, that looks exactly like this does, right? So, now that I've shown that those two equations are the same, I can now say that x1, 2 and 3, so x1, x2 and x3 are approximate solutions to x cubed minus 2x squared minus 5 equals 0. And that's it. Okay? But rearranging these formulas can get a bit tricky in terms of the algebra because you need to know what they're thinking about. And again, it does come back in A level as well. But so far, we're okay with that. I'm assuming we're finding it a bit easy. Would that be fair to say? Good, yeah. Is this worthwhile? Like, is this a good thing to go through? Because again, if you're sitting there bored, not really caring because you know it all, then that's not good. But is this okay? Because again, this is like the last major topic we need to go through, really. Oh, perfect. Approximate means close to, yeah, that's exactly what it means. Okay. It doesn't mean exact. So approximate means it's roughly correct. Okay. So for example, if I said pi, right, it's infinitely long, but I could say it's approximately 3.14, right? Because it's close to 3.14, but it's not exactly 3.14. Or if I were guessing your height, I might say you're approximately 5'6" or something. It's not exact, but it's an approximate. Okay. So another kind of question they can give you. So show that the equation, this has a solution between x is 1 and x is 2. So again, this is a common thing that they ask you. Again, comes up again in A level, etc., etc. So, what you want to do here is you sub in the values for x. So when x equals 1, what does the equation give you? Okay. And, well, I don't need a calculator for that. 2 times 1 is 2, minus 1 is 1, minus 3 is minus 2. And x is 2. Okay, so 2 cubed is 8, times 2 is 16, minus 4 is 12, minus 3 is 9. Cool. So, here's where things get a bit more interesting, okay? When you sub in those two values, if there is a change in sign, then there is a solution between those two values. Okay? So if this first value is negative and the second one's positive, or the first one's positive and the next one's negative, there exists a solution, okay? So what you want to write exactly is change in sign, and I'll go through why in a second. Okay, so are we okay with why that's the case, or would you like me to explain this? Have a think for a second, and then let me know if you would like me to go through it as well. In fact, I'll probably go through it anyway. No? Okay, so we want to find a solution for when this equation equals 0, right? Equals 0. Now, if I were to draw this little curve out, I actually don't know what it looks like, not completely. But since it's a quadratic and it's positive, it's going to probably look like a U. Like this, yeah? I don't know what the roots are, it doesn't matter. I don't care. when it equals 0, I'm basically looking for the x-intercepts. Yep, so the word roots is the same as solutions. Okay, so roots, solutions, they all mean the same thing. Oh, thank you, Evie. I made a mistake. I told you I'm a bit dazed at the moment. Yeah, it's a cubic graph. Thank you. Well spotted. So it's going to look, let's say, something like this, right? I don't know exactly what it looks like, but it doesn't matter. Okay? And I have these points here. Thank you for pointing that out, yeah. I do feel a bit dazed at the moment. My apologies. Okay. So we want to find where equals 0, which is where it crosses the x-axis, right? Which, yes, are the roots or solutions. Now, I've subbed in x equals 1 and x equals 2. Now when I subbed in... No worries, hydrocarbon, welcome. Now when I subbed in x is 1, I got a negative value, so I got a value that's somewhere down here, right? And when I subbed in x equals 2, I got a positive value. Now because my graph is a continuous line, if it goes from negative to positive or positive to negative, it has to go through 0. Okay? Every function you deal with, except reciprocal functions, always are a smooth curve. They're called continuous curves. Okay? Which means if there's a change in sign, so if it goes from negative to positive or positive to negative, it has to go through 0. So look over here. If I subbed in x equals whatever this is, I'd get a positive value, then I'd get a negative value. And it does go through 0 between those two values. Okay? Does that make a bit more sense? So hydrocarbon, I don't know if you can pick up what's happening because you've joined slightly late. But essentially one of the iteration questions they can give you... Oh, that all makes sense. Okay. Evie, is that okay? So yeah. Perfect. Okay, I'm glad that makes sense now. And again, thank you for spotting that I drew the wrong graph. And lastly, so again, these are the hard questions in my opinion. Normal iteration I don't think is that difficult. I think you guys are completely fine with it. But when it comes to rearranging and then some of the slightly different things they can ask you, it can get a bit tricky. So, show that the equation 2x cubed minus x squared minus 3 can be rearranged to give this. So again, we need to use our logic. Now, I said before that we can look at the signs, right? So if I look at the signs, the 2 is positive, so it needs to stay positive. The 3 is positive. This one's good. What do you mean by that? Anyways, the 3 is positive, so I need to make that positive somehow. And there's a square root. Okay? Easy to get, yeah. So since there's a square root, this thing on this side is going to be the x squared here. So I'm going to move that x squared to the other side. So now I have x squared equals 2x cubed minus 3. Okay. So what I'd probably want to do next is, so again, continuously think about what you need to do. So actually what might have been better for me to have done is to, because the 3 is positive, move the 3 over here and the x squared over there. And then not divide by x cubed. Not divide by x cubed. Because again, we need to square root it at some point, right? So what we're actually going to do is factorize out an x squared. And if you have a look, I now have the denominator of that fraction. So I'm in the money. Okay? So even though I made a slight mistake in the beginning, I constantly think, okay, look at the answer. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Okay? So now if I divide both sides by 2x minus 1, I'm going to have x squared equals 3 over 2x minus 1, and then all I need to do is square root both sides, and I get 3 over 2x minus 1. Yeah, you can if you want to. You can constantly just kind of rearrange stuff whenever you want. Obviously, so with your teachers, I imagine that they tell you that there's one specific correct way of doing things, but they just want you to be really efficient, right? Which isn't the worst thing to be, but you can do whatever you want so long as you follow the rules of maths, which is a good thing, right? So, we'll do the iteration because a few more people have joined, so I'm going to show you the little trick that I have. So again, these are normally 3 markers, and you can do them in about 10 seconds. So what I do, and I imagine some other people do as well, is I take x0, which is the number we start with, right? So 1, and I just press equals. So now, the ANS button just gives me that 1, because the ANS button saves your previous answer, okay? And then all I do is I rewrite this exact same formula, but instead of the variable, I'm going to put the ANS button. So square root 3 over 2 ANS minus 1. Now every time I press equals, it's going to give me the next iteration, right? And it says use it twice. So if I just say x1 equals root 3, then if I press equals again, I get what the next iteration would be. Okay. So in this case, it just says use it twice to find an estimate for the solution of, so your estimate is going to just be 1.103. And that's it. Nice and quick. We probably don't need to do another one of these. So let's do another one of these. Okay. So, this is something that some people get confused on, okay? So you know how before I said you sub in the value and you should get a difference in sign? It only works if it equals 0. It could be rounded to the nearest whole number, yeah. It could be. So, nearest whole number or like 1 decimal place. Absolutely. If we want to show this equation has a solution between 0 and 1, what we have to do is make it equal to 0 first, okay? So you need to just move it over to the other side. Now again, this obviously it seems like an easy step now, but you'd be surprised at how many students forget that in the exam. Because again, we're looking for a change in sign. I won't get a change in sign if it equals anything other than 0. Okay? Just be really careful with that. Then again, we're just going to sub in x equals 0. That whole thing's going to be 0 plus 0 minus 1 is going to equal... No, graphics tablet. It probably looks like I write with the mouse because my handwriting isn't the best. But 1 plus 4 is 5, minus 1 is 4. But yeah, I write with the graphics tablet, so my handwriting isn't as bad as it could be. And yeah, so again we have a change in sign. And again you'd write implies. Thank you. Today it's not as good as it could be because I'm feeling a bit dizzy, so I'm slightly ill. No, honestly, writing. I know some people that can write with the mouse pretty well, but they're very slow, and I don't want to be slow. And my handwriting isn't the best, but so I wanted to make sure it's still legible for you guys. But yeah, I use a graphics tablet. And show that it can be rearranged. Okay, this shouldn't be too bad. One thing to note though is you're not rearranging for x cubed, right? Because the x cubed is actually over here. So you're actually just rearranging for x. So again, look at the signs. There's a minus x cubed. Everything's divided by 4. So using those things together, you can probably see we want to get 4x by itself. And then just divide by 4. But you do need to show the steps. Okay, so do it in a couple steps just to make sure you get the marks. That's it. Also, I don't know if you guys saw, I did upload that video about the breakdown of exactly how the examiners kind of mark your work and the criteria that they have. And it is the same for all exam boards and all levels. If you haven't, I can go through that again at the end of the lesson as well. That's completely fine because we're actually almost... In fact, this is the last question, so yeah, we can definitely do that. So yeah, that's it with iteration. So I'm going to go through some exam technique stuff. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics. So now that I've got a few of you here, we've basically covered all of the major topics, right? So we've done 14, this is the 14th lesson, we've done pretty much everything. I can start just going through exam papers from next week. That's completely fine. Or if you want me to go through something else, I can also do that. So what I could do is like get the last few questions or every single paper and just do those or whatever. So if you guys want to have a think, just message as soon as you know what you kind of want, and then we can go through that. But in terms of the kind of assessment objective stuff, did you guys see that video I made? Or do you want me to go through that now? Mega hard exam questions. Okay. Well, I might as well write that down. You saw? Okay. Okay, good. I hope that makes sense. By the way, that changes for A level. So with GCSEs, everything's standardised. So every exam board... Yeah, we can do that. That's completely fine. What I also want you guys to know is that because you guys are probably doing different exam boards, if I did like an Edexcel paper, it is going to be useful to you, right? If I did an AQA paper but you're doing something else, it's still useful to you because every single exam board is judged on the same things, right? In every exam paper, you do the same content, okay? So OCR, CIE, all of that stuff it's all completely the same. So it's different for A levels, but for GCSE, all of the content is the same across all exam boards, and there's no difference to the breakdown or anything. So realistically speaking, if I gave you like some random exam paper, it's all going to be useful. But we can go straight to exam papers. Mega hard exam questions, good. Did you guys have any questions about that video? In terms of that? Mega hard exam questions, I like that. Perfect, okay. So, add a request to kind of go through how to think more logically, and also like how to like approach questions and things like that. So, one thing I will like to say is, more like it please. Okay, yeah, definitely I can do that. With questions, and I know this is probably advice you've heard before, but you don't 100% believe it yet, is, can we go through 10 points? Okay, so turning points and roots of quadratics with... Okay, sure, yeah, we can do that. So when you go into an exam question, right, every piece of information they give you is useful, right? They don't give you stuff that's not used in the question. So one thing to be really clear on is to, yes, read the question, but think about why they've given you the information they've given you, right? Because it's almost always, in fact it is always going to be useful for the question. So what I have is I have some collection of exam questions open, and these are a bit tricky. So, yeah, let's do it, let's do it. Should I print it over? No, let's just do it. Okay. So ignore the 1,000 tabs I have open. I'm more organised than this, I promise. No, I'm joking. It's because I've got a lot of like work to catch up on because I was ill for the last few days. So if I make this slightly bigger, so this is an AQA question, right? And this is probably one that would catch quite a few people off. I know, I like functions too. So they give you a graph, x cubed plus 6 is translated 4 units to the right. The translated graph has the equation y equals f of x, work out f of x, give your answer in the form, right? So if we have a look at this, oh, why can't I draw on it? Okay. I'm assuming if I saved it I could. Bear with me 1 second. So if I just save this on my desktop for now. Now can I draw on it? Of course. Okay. It's fine. I'll print it over so we can actually write on it. But it tells me it's been translated 4 units to the right. And it needs to give this answer in the form. So a lot of students will approach this question and they'll be kind of apprehensive about it. They won't know how to answer it. But if we take it step by step, every piece of information is useful. Okay? They've told us the original equation. I mean, that's pretty obvious that's going to be useful. And it's translated 4 to the right. So what I would do is think about, okay, what does it mean to be translated 4 to the right? Well, okay, you know what? I'm not going to print it, instead I'll just screenshot it. Whoops. Okay. So, what does it mean by translated 4 to the right? Well, what they're trying to test here is if you remember that for it to be 4 to the right, it needs to be inside the bracket because it's affecting the x-axis, and that means you need to put the opposite number in, right? Because when it's inside the bracket, you put in the opposite value, right? So you flip the sign on it. Does that make sense so far? So now what I need to do is I need to look back at the original and think, how can I make this happen? Well, all you need to do is replace x with x minus 4. So then I have x minus 4 cubed plus 6. Now that would actually be one answer. But they want you to give it into this form here. Now that first step is where most students messed up on the question. Okay? Because they didn't make the link. Right? Some of them did make the link, but instead they did this. Or they did this. Because they forgot about it. Or when they subbed it in, they did something like this. They did x cubed plus 6 minus 4. So, again, every piece of information they give you is 100% useful. So what you need to do is take stock of what they've given you. Right? This is useful. This is useful. So think about, but this, how can I use it? That's what you should be thinking about in an exam. Now, one other piece of advice I'd give you is if you can't think of an answer in 10 seconds, skip the question and go on. So in every exam I've done, I will read the question. By the time I've read the question, I give myself a few seconds. If I can't think of what to do, I go straight to the next question. And then when I get to the end of the paper, I go back to the beginning and work my way through again. Okay? Because you can't waste time in exams. They really don't give you enough time. Right? Personally, I think they should give you an unlimited amount of time, because what's the point in rushing you, right? But you don't have much time, so just keep rolling through it. Okay? I've been through papers 3 times, and on the 3rd time I'll do a question. Right? Because again, I'll look through the paper, I'll get to the same question. Let's say question 2, I had to skip the first time. I come back round, I look at question 2, 10 seconds again. Nope, can't think of an answer, go to the next question. And on the 3rd attempt, then I'll spend 5 minutes on it. Because I know that if I waste time on that question, I'm going to lose more marks than it's worth. The other thing to realise is that your brain has 2 halves, right? You have a conscious brain and an unconscious brain. If you read a question, right, and then go on to another question, your unconscious brain will start working on a solution. And I've had this happen to me many, many times. How many times has it been where you've like you know when you're in a shower, right? And then you think back to an argument you've had with someone, and then you think about you realise all these good things you could have said. It's because your unconscious brain is working on that problem. right? And it's only when you distract yourself that you can think about it. So it's a similar thing to that. Yeah, it's a similar thing, right? I've had times where, like in my degree, where I'll sit looking at a problem for 10-15 minutes, I'll walk downstairs, and while I'm like getting a glass of water, I'll go, oh wait, that's it. Right? It's good to kind of let your unconscious brain have a go at it for a bit. So again, 10 seconds. That's a long time, to be fair. Right, to just be staring at a piece of paper. So really, really try and remember that. Would everyone be okay with this? So afterwards, by the way, this answer, you would just expand the brackets and you're done. And that's 4 marks. But again, students got a bit panicked about it. The next, yeah. So, the next one is a 5 marker. Again, it's just a solving algebra question. But a lot of students found this one tricky as well. And it's probably because x turns up 3 times in the expression. I know, yeah. So these are very common. But again, a lot of people find these tricky. Also, what I want to point out, right, is it's good that you're saying you've done a lot of these because maths is just practice, especially GCSE Maths. So it's good that you're asking me about logic and things like that because they are useful. But truth be told, a lot of GCSE Maths questions just get repeated every year. So you don't really need to worry about it that much. So with this, what would I do? Well, I hate fractions. So my first step in any solving question, if there's a fraction, is to get rid of the fraction. Right? So if I think about it, and how do I get rid of fractions? Well, the easiest way to get rid of fractions is to times them by their denominator. Right? So I times by 4x plus 1, and I'm timesing the whole equation by 4x plus 1. Right? So x plus 1. And then again, I still have a fraction, so I'll times that by its denominator. So then I have 5, x squared plus 3 equals 2x, 4x plus 1. And now that's just a quadratic equation, which you guys have solved a million times. Right? But again, a lot of students looked at this and panicked. And what they tried to do is they tried to flip the fractions, they tried to do all sorts of weird things. Think of the basics. Interesting. Can we look at Awful 1 2022 paper? 5 or 6 marks, and you had to find A, B, and C, and there's so many numbers. We can. I think we did a lesson on it. Identities? Identities? Again, I'm a bit dazed at the moment, so I might be being stupid, but... What do you mean by identities exactly? Oh, as in... Wait, 3 equals. So do you mean something like... that? Or whatever? Like this symbol? Or do you mean it has 3 equal signs? Okay. So there's an awful one. Can we have a look at... We definitely can. Let me try and find a set of questions on it. Just trying to think. It was an identities question, really? Okay. Oh, I see, where it has all those letters and numbers. Where it might say something like, Jeez, that's interesting. I'll try and find some questions on it. It hasn't really come up that much, to be honest. Not much at all. That's why I was quite interested in, like... I'm trying to look now quickly, but... Yeah, I mean, I've had stuff like... God, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. I'm trying to think of where I've found it. I do have some, somewhere. We can definitely have a look at that. We can definitely have a look at that, yeah. But no, that's interesting. There's a 5, 6, 1. I think I know what you mean now, where like you'll have like ax squared, and then it'll have like a long bracket, right? And expanding quadratics, yeah. Now I know what you mean, yeah. Yeah. So I think what I would call that is equating coefficients. Entire page wide, Jesus Christ. They must have really hated the 2022 kids. Yeah, so that's actually a really good point, Evie. But C does it counts for the purposes of this. Nice work. Okay, we can definitely have a look at that. Yeah. So Evie is right. It's not too bad once we once you get the hang of it. But I can easily see where your confusion's coming from, as my confusion showed earlier as well. Okay, so what we do next week then is I'll start gathering some like the hardest exam questions I can find from any exam board, just so we can get really prepared for it. I'll also go through the equating coefficients, just so we can have some practice on that. And I think from then on we'll just keep doing really hard exam questions unless you guys have something else you want me to do. You know, we can kind of play it by ear. That might be a good thing to do. Especially because Christmas is coming up, right? Oh, yeah, just so you know, I will be doing these lessons over Christmas. I don't expect you guys to join, obviously, because you deserve a break, especially after like mocks and everything. But they will be there for when you like want them afterwards, because again, they're uploaded to YouTube anyway, so you feel free to watch them afterwards. You have no obligation to join, but I will still be here recording them anyway. Just so you guys are aware. If you want me to like stop the exam questions for that, that's completely fine. 2 times average velocity, final velocity. When do you start revising for the real exams? To be honest, revising for mocks is revising for the real exams. But I would say, honestly, just the sooner you start, the less pressure it is. But for my exams, I didn't revise for that long, personally. But it's good to start early, right? So I'd say after the Christmas break. Take the Christmas break off, and then come back in January with working ever so slightly harder. So essentially the GCSE mocks are kind of fake exams that people... Yeah, no worries, Hydrocarbon. So basically what will they do in schools is they have fake exams. They're under exam conditions and everything just to give you an idea of what you would do in the real thing. Right? So essentially it's an exam, but it doesn't actually count. It's just to give you an idea of where you are. Also, thank you for saying I deserve a break more than you guys do. You guys definitely work harder than I do. GCSE students work extremely hard. Yeah, so Lila, exactly, right? The thing is during your exam period, it lasts about a month, maybe slightly less, and in that time you're going to have over a dozen exams. So it's not going to be that easy. Unfortunately, there's going to be more exams in May. You made 30 plus mistakes, jeez. Yeah, exactly, that's the thing. So what you guys are saying is completely correct, right? Is in an exam, I guarantee you there isn't going to be a question that you look at and you go, what the hell is this? I don't get it. I've never seen it before, right? The scary thing about that is that the reason why you get a 7 or an 8 instead of a 9 is because of little mistakes. So that's why I say practice, right? Because the max you can get in foundation is a 4, actually. A 5, sorry, yeah, you're right, it's a 5. That's the highest you can get. Evie, if you send me any of your tests, so you have my email address, if you just take pictures of your papers, or scan them or whatever, you can send them to me and I can, don't worry, Hydrocarbon, it's fine. I can kind of give you some feedback on it. No, Hydrocarbon, it's fine. Yeah, I knew what you meant, it's fine. I can't revise maths as I don't understand any of it, as it stresses me out unless I'm in the exam, as I think more logically. Yeah, so best thing to do then is, if you're getting stressed out, like that's reasonable, right? It's understandable. What I would do is note down any topics you're finding stressful, and let me know, and I can go through them, like either on a stream or over email or something like that. But there are loads of resources out there for that. Minimum you can get in higher is a 5. Actually, Hydrocarbon, you can get lower than a 5 in a higher paper. So there's only an upper limit. There's no lower limit, unfortunately. I did the paper twice, but still didn't catch my mistakes. Yeah, so again, with the mistakes, it can be anything from like changing a sign accidentally and things like that. And when you're under pressure, it's inevitable that's going to happen. The best thing to do is, I think I've already told you this tip, but something that and again, bear in mind, human beings make mistakes, right? You've seen me make mistakes, right? And I've done GCSE Maths for like 8 years now. And if I'm making mistakes, you're definitely going to make mistakes. So it's kind of inevitable, but the best thing to do is just like try and do the maths again in your head and see if what you're saying makes sense, right? Other than that, it's about being very slow and careful, okay? So the reason why I say do practice papers and time yourself is if you time yourself, you can see if you're going too fast or too slow. In an ideal world, you will finish the exact second the exam finishes, right? And that way you're doing the working out very slow and careful, which means you're not making mistakes, but you also get to finish the paper. That level of timing only comes if you do every single paper multiple times. Okay? Like for me, I used to make a lot of mistakes because so when I did like exams and stuff, I would finish like half an hour plus early. And then I'd go through and check again, but then I'd make mistakes. And then when we went through it in class, I would look and I'd say, oh, why did I do that? That's such a stupid mistake. Oh, I made this a positive instead of a negative. It's like, okay, but I don't get another chance in the exam. So how fast would I say? I would say try and finish with about 5 or 10 minutes to spare and use that time to check over your answers. But if there's a 5-mark question, try and take about 3 or 4 minutes to do it. Like, be really slow and careful. Like, with things like this, what a lot of people do is they do cross multiplication, right? So they times by the whole thing at once. Whole thing at once. Right? And then they'll do like 5x squared plus 3. And that's correct. But I've seen it so many times that when it gets to a test, because I've given people tests before, they make a mistake all the time because they're rushing. Okay? In an exam, it's very tempting to be really, really quick. But don't be quick, be slow. Slow yourself down. It's like, you know when you've had to give like speeches for like English or something? People speak a lot faster when they're in front of an audience because they're nervous. It's the same thing. The best advice for speaking and for doing maths questions is to intentionally slow yourself down. Okay? Because your brain's going to be working faster than it normally does, so you have to slow it down to bring it back to a normal level. Okay? But again, I want you to know that I leave my email address not just so you can ask for tuition, but you can email me any questions you have, and I will respond within 24 hours, 100%. If you email me a question, I will do it and then send it back to you, or I'll make a video on it if it's really good. Anything like that. So if you have any questions about anything, about school, about GCSEs, about maths, about whatever, please, please, please email me. Okay? And you'll get a response. Hydrocarbon, what can I do after GCSEs? You can do sixth form, which is where you can do A-levels, and then go on to do university afterwards. Yeah. Good. I think you will. But it's all practice. To be honest, in a mock, if you're getting 8s, that's really, really good. Because you're about 5 months away from the exam? So if you're getting 8s already, you've got 5 months to get a 9, to go up 1 grade. In 5 months, I've seen people go up 3-4 grades. So it's really, really strong. Really good. But yeah, hydrocarbon, you can do A-levels and then go on to university. But genuinely, for Christmas, I'll take a break. Okay? I have not, no. I'm in the maths department at school, unfortunately. I tutor science, but as a tutor, you don't get access to the 2022 papers. It's only as a teacher, a head of department specifically. I might be able to try and steal a peek, but oh really? I did physics A level. I liked it. It's hard. It's very hard. It takes a lot of logic, and it's very conceptually difficult. But if you need it for university or you're interested in it, I think it is one of the most interesting ones. And I would like to add that physics A level will develop your logic better than a lot of other A levels. A level maths develops your logic as well, but with A level physics you need to be very logical, and you'll develop that skill, which I think is a very useful skill to have, and it will help you in A level maths as well. Damn. It's a strong set of choices, yeah. So, so it depends on the school you go to. I'm assuming you don't go to a grammar school. If you go to a regular state school, they normally require a grade 6 to do science A level. 5 or a 6. But you can speak to them to see if you can get better. I think you guys are probably working at above the 5 or 6 there. I mean, just the fact that you join a live stream every single week in your own time shows that you guys are probably quite on it. But yeah, normally they require grade 6. I don't think so. So with A-levels, recently, you know how they kind of redid the spec? What they did is they reduced the number of exams you had to do. So it's a lot of work, but I wouldn't say it's like way too hard. I wouldn't say that. Biology is a lot of memory. Chemistry, there's some, I'd say, good calculations. It's quite interesting. Physics, there's a hell of a lot of calculations, but not much memory, which is good. Yeah. If you're an 8-8, fine. The jump between GCSEs and A-levels is big. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's good. Good, Lila. Are A-levels overly hyped up to be terrible? Yeah. I think sixth formers... you'll find this at university as well. People like to be the ones that are suffering. They like to be, oh man, my A-levels, so A-levels. And they do it for university as well. Like, my degree is so hard, this, that and the other. It's like, chill. A-levels is, I personally think, the reason why people find A-levels difficult is the content is difficult, but you also have to think about university, which is stressful. A lot of people start driving and working in A-levels, which again is more stress. And I think just because you're maturing into adults, right, 16 to 18, quite important years, they put more pressure on themselves. But honestly, A-levels are not terrible. So many people do them every single year. Millions of people do them every year. It can't be that bad, right? It's definitely doable. And honestly, I find it more interesting because it's more varied. There's more stuff to do. But I think it is overhyped to be terrible. It's really not that bad. And like I said, millions of people do it. In fact, I'm pretty sure you guys have to stay in school until you're 18 now anyway, so now everyone has to do them. They're not too bad. I know. That's why I think you're really going to like A-levels. Because the maths gets a lot more fun. It's more challenging. You have to think about it. Physics, I think you're going to... Honestly, I don't know if you like physics, but physics in terms of a challenge, it is. Right? Like if you come across a topic like materials, there are so many scenarios they put you in. It's really interesting. It's fun to teach as well, because it's always different. You're my new best friend. Yeah. It is a lot more of a challenge. GCSEs, again, it's overwhelming because there's a lot of topics and everything, and there's a lot of subjects you have to do and all this other stuff. But, yeah. That's why I like A-level. It's more concentrated, right? You're going to pick 3 subjects. So you only have to do those 3 subjects. And Evie, like you said, you're doing maths, further maths and physics. You have basically 2 subjects, right? Maths and physics. So it's a lot more focused, which I like. But it's not terrible. I also think you're going to get a much better relationship with your teachers. I get that, but what you have to do is coast it in. A few more months, and then you'll be able to start the fun stuff. Yeah. And also, like, over summer, there's no harm in you, like, starting A-level maths a bit early, if you wanted to. But... yeah, I get the losing the enjoyment bit. It gets that way of teaching it as well. But in A-levels, you'll also get a much closer relationship with your teachers. You'll be able to banter with them a bit more, because they'll look at you as adults instead of children. Which is good to see as well. Yeah. You'll go through a lot of changes, which is good. And it'll be the first time you're choosing all of your own subjects. Which is fun. Okay. Yeah, no worries. It's always a pleasure to do it with you guys joining in. But so for next week, I think we'll start with equating coefficients and then do some exam stuff. Then I'll just find a bunch of difficult questions and we'll go through them. But yeah, if you do have any questions or anything, email me. Okay, you can just write out a list of topics you want me to go through. You can send a picture, whatever. Thanks, Evie. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get some food now, which should hopefully stop me from being a bit dizzy. And yeah, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. And well done on finishing your kind of mocks and everything. Just coast it into the exam. You're welcome, Lila. You're very welcome.